Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers CBO.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Knowledge Forum, a monthly knowledge forum by the Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers. Hey, I know this is not the most familiar face, but I'm very excited to be here, and I'm excited that you all are here. We are going to have a very, very informative podcast out knowledge forum today. So it's all about regenerative farming. But first of all, as we always do, I would like to start off with an icebreaker. And I know a few of you are familiar with this. If it's your first time, we always start off with an icebreaker. And of course, we have some amazing panelists with us. Arlena, she is joining us here as well. And I believe Uriah should be joining us in a second. There he is. There he is. So I'm going to start with some panel questions. Thank you all so much for patiently waiting. And when we usually do this using our polls, so if it does pop up on your screen, please let me know. Now, the first question is, where are you joining us from? I think it's very important for us to all share where we're messaging from. Feel free to use the chat function. You should be able to message on it. If you cannot, please let me know. I do believe everyone has access. If not, that's okay. We're about to open that up right now. But share where you're attending from. I see one person's answered. I see Uriah says Seguin, Texas. Well, yes, 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 yes. Who else? Let's see. Chat should be on for everybody. All right. Three people have answered. Okay. I see seven attendees. So I want all seven of y'all to share. Where are you joining us from? It's so great to see you. It's so great for you all to be here. Five people. Perfect, perfect, perfect. More people are joining us. Okay. I usually put about a minute. So we're about 5 seconds to end, and I'm going to end that. And also, you could drop all that information in the webinar chat as well. So let's see. Where are people joining us from? Let's see, y'all. Share details. Okay, okay. All right. We got boogie4786 at gmail.com from Dallas, Texas. We have another person from North Carolina. We got Sydney from Iowa. We got Dots Farms from Lancaster, Texas. And we got another person from Moore, Texas, southwest of San Antonio. Well, welcome, welcome. I believe I'm North San Antonio, and Uriah, I do believe you are in San. No, you're like right off of San Antonio, like Seguin, I believe, right?
Yeah, I am. I'm having some camera difficulties here.
I see, I see. All right, well, Uriah's gonna get that sorted out. We're gonna move on to the next poll, y'all. So,
Okay.
next thing I always say is, we always like to find out from our guests if you grow your own food. So, all right. Okay. Answers coming in. Thank you. Perfect. Perfect. Some people saying yes, some people saying no. That's great. It's always important to see from our guests. I don't grow my own food. I do well, I grow some herbs like rosemary and sage and whatnot. So I'm not that proficient, but definitely I see some folks have already responded. Okay. Seems like a lot of people already responded already. So I'm just going to end this very quickly and see where we are. Let's see. And let's see our results. Let's see what folks are talking about. Okay. We have two maybes. We have two yeses and five no's. Well, at Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers, our goal is to change your no to a yes, because we believe that every one of us should be growing our own food for sustenance, for health. We actually had a knowledge forum, and we have a blog post by Amazing Raya where it talks about how food is health. So that is very, very important to us here at Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers. And my final icebreaker question is, and this is for those people who grow their own food, and we have two people. But if you are planning to, if you grow your own produce or livestock, what would you grow, or what do you grow? Please share your thoughts. I know some people have said maybe as well. Some people say no. Some people say yes. But if you chose to grow your own food, what would that be? Feel free to drop it on the poll question or in the chat. We would love to hear from you. We think it's always amazing to hear how our participants plan on growing food or what they plan to grow, hopefully in the near future. So even if you're not thinking about it and you're saying, you know what, I want to do this one day, what would that produce be? Some people have said, whether it's corn, wheat. Some people have said, having livestock, like small livestock or large livestock. It really all depends on where you are trying, what your vision is and your goal is for your farm or ranch. Okay, we got 6 questions and we're a minute in, so I'm gonna end that. And let me see. Let's see what people are talking about. So, okay, we have a guest says grass and hay for feed for livestock. Love that. Another guest, collard greens, tomatoes, and squash. Love that. Another guest, I have been raising goats for over 20 years. Woohoo! Congratulations. And growing my own food since 2011. Well, you're a veteran and we would love to learn from you. So please feel free to ask questions during this discussion. Another guest says vegetables, perfect. Another guest said produce. Another guest said goats and eggs. I love it. I love me a good goat. I'm a sucker for a good goat. I'm just gonna put it out there right now. If you like, I eat goat and I've had goat plenty of times and it's delicious. And last team meeting, we had a funny story about. I have a funny story about goats that I had when I was younger, but I'll leave that for another day. Maybe if you guys stay till the end, I'll tell the story. How about that? Okay, our chat is also buzzing. Uh, Ryan says watermelons, herbs, and beans. Oh, that's amazing. Deidre says tomatoes, okra, collard greens, peppers, and cabbage. That sounds good. That sounds delicious. Jasmine says herbs as well and fruits. All right, y'all. Look at that. I love this. I love this. Well, I am so grateful that you all are joining us today. I think it's amazing. Arlena just dropped in. Okay, Arlena, she said watermelons, tomatoes, peppers, onions, garlic, cucumbers, beans, a few corn, okra, and eggplant. She says she has 6 chicks and would add more small livestock like rabbits, African geese, and a few lambs over time. Well, that's a goal right there, Arlena. Okay, I want to be you. I really want to be you. But no, that's amazing. But that's really how we want you guys to envision where you future farms. This is so important at Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers that we empower each and every one of you to grow your own produce, raise your own livestock, and provide sustenance and wealth for your family. Because ultimately, we want to be able to feed our families and also feed our finances as well. Because you don't just pour money to it and nothing happens to it. We want it to be a two-way street for you as well. So I am going to pass the buck to Ryan now, and he is going to introduce our esteemed speaker, who you all might know already.
All right. Hey, Uche. So today we have Phil P. Wade, Phil Wade Ross today. He's the co-owner of Hoaganie Farm Products, a cattle and grass farming operation just outside of College Station, Texas. P. Wade Ross is a fourth generation farmer. Woohoo! On land that has been in his family since the late 1800s. That's a proud accomplishment, right? Serving as chief executive of Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers, CBO, Mr. Ross is a regular participant on numerous coalitions and collaboratives throughout the South, becoming increasingly recognized as a change agent for small farmers of color. With the understanding that effective farming starts with establishing fertile soil, P. Wade Ross is currently in the final stages of becoming certified as a natural biology soil biologist consultant. Okay. Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers CBO's current focus is to establish clear on-ramps and roadmaps for Black and Indigenous producers to profitably participate in local food systems establishing a culture and legacy of prosperity to be enjoyed for generations to come. Wow. Okay. There he
All
is.
right,
Yes.
Phil. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hey, how's it going, y'all? Y'all making a black man blush. That ain't easy to do.
We thought we'll throw some beautiful words in there, make it sound really good.
Hey, appreciate it. You're supposed to know that by heart. You're right. What you doing, reading, man?
It's a lot. I just didn't want to make any mistakes. This is a
Oh,
awesome
no, I'm just
resume.
messing. Just
Yeah,
give
but
me a hard time.
yes,
How
sir.
goes it, y'all?
All right. So so I guess I'm gonna have the first couple of questions here. So uh Phil, we're talking about regenerative agriculture, right? So can you please briefly share with our audience a bit about your family's farming background, along with some of the farm-related work you are currently doing in nonprofit spaces?
Definitely, and I was told by y'all that you had a lot of questions to keep it short, so I'll try to give you the short version. As you heard, my great grandfather, Grandpa Jack Ross, who was a runaway slave, actually settled in Texas, in Bryan, College Station, Texas, as a blacksmith, and was good at what he did to the point where he was given the opportunity to purchase land, and which he did. If you read the story on our website, he ended up paying for that land twice, because they didn't believe he could read and write. And once they discovered he notched a tree out back, they cut it down and made him start over. So, to say the least, that land has a lot of sentimental value within our family. Now, my grandfather, once he became about 30, 40 years old, he migrated up north with his brothers, my great uncles, and landed in Seattle, Washington, where there was a lot of work at that time. Although he grew up on the land and farmed the land during the Dust Bowl migration up there in the 40s. And our family didn't return until the late 80s. Um, my particular family, my immediate family, my dad actually, who was born on the land, came back after early retirement in the late 80s, early 90s, started to farm the land. We made the mistake that a lot of novices who are new to farming make, which was we went out and bought all this expensive cattle with all these pipe dreams of becoming cattle ranchers because, just like everybody else, we've watched those black and white movies on TV, and that's what we wanted to do, only to find out later that it makes much more sense to first become a grass farmer. So we became grass farmers, because we almost went broke trying to feed the cattle. So, and then we started transition, I would say, in 2015, 2016, thanks to my younger brother, who is now our farm manager, who really preached, to start going natural and regenerative agriculture. So that led myself. I'm one of those people who just I don't like to not be in the know. So that led me on a kind of a journey to become a soil specialist and really understand not only what goes on above the ground, but really, understanding what goes on below the ground. So that was pretty much it. And then COVID hit, I think, of course, in 2020. That's when my parents kind of passed the baton to me, to keep the ball rolling with our organization, and being what many would call a serial entrepreneur. I just love business and business development. Um, the first thing I did was say, hey, wait a minute, we've done a great job as an organization in a lot of areas, but I'm not seeing enough farmers, monetizing, especially people who look like you and me, monetizing the land, let alone, learning some of the regenerative practices. I really noticed that we were on the outside looking in, and it was really glaring as I would get calls from CNN and USA Today wanting to know, hey, how is this pandemic impacting the business of Black farmers? And I'm going, okay, what business? There's no difference. And that really was alarming to me, which has led to some of the things that we're doing now, which is a strong focus, not only on regenerative agriculture, which is the topic of tonight, but also utilizing that to monetize our land and get us from being on the outside looking into the food systems.
Okay, okay.
Yes,
Thank you so
yes.
much. I guess I have a follow-up question. I know you were talking about you spoke a little bit about challenges you face or your family faced when they were purchasing their land, as well as some of the challenges that you shared with CNN and NBC, just is there even what's going on with agriculture in Texas? So can you speak on some of those specific challenges that are currently for Black or indigenous BIPOC farmers in Texas?
Yeah, I'm smiling because that's a that's a webinar in itself. But I think the short answer is really the biggest challenges I think we see is really rebuilding hope, trust, and confidence. Really with farmers that we serve, especially after years and years of just built up disenfranchisement. And we've had the opportunities, as you know, Uche, that we've been all around, Texas, East and Central Texas. Same story, different place, So I guess the longer answer is that, due to some of the access of not only culturally relevant farm production and business knowledge, information, but also access to markets, I would say access to operating capital. If one of the articles that I was in with CNN, the the reporter shared with me the fact that out of I think almost 21,000 folks, and I think it was 2021 or maybe it was 2022 farmers who applied, um, I think 18,000 of them were white farmers, 42% got turned down. In contrast, less than 900 Black farmers applied nationwide for any type of farm loan, yet only 9% of them were approved. So that tells you right there, that there's something wrong with that equation. And so there's farming itself is a cash heavy, especially if you're a commercial farmer. Any commercial farmer will tell you it takes cash flow and operating capital. If you don't have access to that, your operation is dead before it ever got started. So I think that's a challenge. The other challenge is just simply time, and investment of education on our parts. But at the end of the day, you have to see an end game before you're going to decide what you're investing your time
Mm.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay. I'm going to ask the next question that's kind of lead into what you mentioned about your family and then our transition into regenerative ag. From your own ground experience and vantage point working in local communities, what are some of the steps that can be taken to get our farmers back to monetizing our land the way we did before the Great Migration?
in. I would say number one probably is understanding soil health and really taking the step to understand what's going on below the ground. I think that's a big, huge thing that especially in Texas, we're taught to pay attention to what's going on above the ground, whether we're trying to raise livestock or crops or what have you. Um, and any any regenerative ag farmer will tell you, any expert will tell you, it's all about the soil. Your soil is really the backbone of your farm operation. You get your soil right, and then everything else, it leads into everything else that you do. So I think number one, I would say is soil health. Um, the other thing when you're talking, I think your question was food supply. Was that part of it too, or
Just monetizing the land the
yeah?
way before the
So
migration.
oh, monetizing the land before, yeah, I would say learning how to farm with the shovel. Number one, being chemical free, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I know that's kind of a taboo conversation amongst many farmers, but really just learning the principles of regenerative agriculture, which is pretty much the soil, just like what I mentioned. Biology, that means anytime you hear the biology, that could be an intimidating word, but all that means is living organisms, water cycles, and solar, the sun, using the sun to your advantage to grow things. And then, the other part is rest that nobody talks about, but just, not disturbing the soil at all.
Wow. Great answer, Phil. I mentioned earlier, we were talking before we started the show, and I read an article about farmers in Kenya who were saying that the soil is dry, and they said chemicals are partly to blame. And so, what are some of the ways that regenerative agriculture practices? How can they help ag worldwide? I'm going to use it like that. How can regenerative agriculture help worldwide to bring back the liveliness and the fertility of the soil that we're seeing now? What are some of the ways?
I think to really dive into that question, I think it's important for education. Um, there's a lot of us who don't understand the why behind the what of regenerative agriculture. A lot of us don't understand that many of these things that we're putting on our land that we're calling fertilizer, that we're putting on our food, that we're then ingesting, are the very same base chemicals that were used in World War I, World War II. In fact, many of them Hitler actually used to gas up people to kill them. So they were then transitioned to, hey, we've got all these chemicals. How do we use them? And they were transitioned into our agricultural system. So, which, later, 70, 80 years later, now you're looking at greenhouse gases, you're looking at some of the impacts that were caused, some of the good stuff that came out, we've been able to feed the world, but there's been a lot of damage that has been done. And what regenerative agriculture does, in my personal opinion, is it not only, allows us to heal, by going back to mimicking as much as possible. It's tough because when you're domestic, we all have domesticated land. Our farms are domesticated land. So, but trying to mimic the practices that have been natural for years and years within the face of the earth before the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s came along, where we started to use the chemicals for mass production. So we can heal it. We just have to reverse it. The other good news, especially for those of us, many of us on this call, is that as I go to these conferences and I see some of the commercial farmers who are in there who don't look like me. Many of them are trying to do that same pivot, a pivot that I just explained to you that none of us have, because we already been on the outside looking in. So that's a pivot that we don't have to have. And many of us, our farms have been laying dormant because of it, because we simply couldn't afford to farm. Well, let's use that to our advantage. That's good news for you and I. But understand that at some point, if we're not learning these principles, that this very advantage that we're looking at right now could be used as a barrier of entry for us, for several different reasons. One which is is that they already have technology in place where they're going to start measuring nutrient density versus what is the most popular thing with commercial farming right now, which is just measuring yields. That's going to be a thing of the past. And if your farm is not set up because you don't know how to grow fresh, healthy food naturally, guess what? Again, you're going to be on the outside looking in.
Hey, Uche, before you, I had a question, Phil. We're throwing this term around regenerative, and so like many people, I just like to be real clear. What does that mean, like in layman's terms? What does regenerative mean?
So let's see. So how do I put this? So there's so many different terms out there. Good, excellent question, number one. So many different terms. Um, I kind of parallel regenerative agriculture with holistic farming as well, almost pretty much one and the same. And really what that means is using, as I talked about before, trying to mimic what nature does on your farm and do it in a way that understands that everything matters. Everything, I think the picture that Uche used with me holding the ball, that was an exercise we do at a lot of our workshops that talks about how the birds and the cows and the, dung beetles and the earthworms and the microorganisms below and the bacteria and the grass, the natural perennials, and all those things tie into each other. And if you take one thing away because you feel like it's a nuisance, guess what? You're probably creating a whole different problem because of how nature is tied together. And that is really what regenerative agriculture is. It's using the natural resources that are already there on your farm and that our good Lord created and designed it that way with as little of our interference as possible, and just make it systematic to a point where if you take care of the soil is eventually going to take care of you, and you don't have to continue to try to, put out, you know, spray it with this sprayer to stop this insect because you've already got that built-in balance. You don't have to try to build this huge irrigation system because you did all the practices that make your soil become a sponge. And now the rainfall becomes your irrigation when everybody else's fields are flooding or, are having these major runoffs because their soil is not built up. So in a nutshell, regenerative agriculture is rebuilding your soil so your soil can take care of you.
Great. Well, I actually have a good follow-up from from the definition, and I know earlier you mentioned how regenerative ag, you know, I guess cleans the toxicity in the land. Well, a lot of experienced farmers, they have mixed, reservation regarding that and in the transitioning to that natural practice. Can you share some common reasons why there's pushback in this?
Yeah, I'm one of those farmers. As my brother was introducing it to us, like, man, what are you talking about? Because, but I think just like anything, there's fear of the unknown, and you people don't like change, and farming is something that's very personal. So it's hard to hear. We're very prideful people as farmers. Any true farmer that the one distinct characteristic is they're very prideful of what they do. And so it can be hard to hear that some of the practices that you felt like was the way may not be actually the way. That's a tough pill to swallow. So, like I said, the good news is that, for many of the farmers that we work with, because it's not a lot, it's not their livelihood, it's not something that they are counting on to put food on the table per se, other than the food that they grow for themselves. But they're not counting on it for their livelihood because of some of the things I've already shared. So it's not as much of a pivot for them. And So we are seeing, even though there's some pushback, we are starting to see a lot of farmers who get it. They, once you can sit down and really explain it to them, and there's going to always be that pushback because change is hard, especially for Black folks. We don't believe it unless we see it till we see it, you know. But that's okay. What we're finding is that what we're doing now is really trying to lean in to the early adapters and show them the successes that come from it. Matter of fact, we're trying to practice what we preach. We've gone out and purchased some livestock and put into place some of these regenerative ag practices. And just a couple of weeks, we're already seeing, some of the fruits of what we're talking about, which really encourages us to move forward. But at the end of the day, really what we're trying to do is take practical things, farm the way our forefathers farmed to create more yield, create the balance. If you got the right balance in your soil, not only are you going to reduce the need for water, if you build your soil up right, but the proper balance in your soil is going to bring, and the diversity is going to bring all the right balance of insects. So now you don't have the pest issues because quiet as it's kept, pests are there because you have unhealthy soil. That's when the pests show up. Pests they prey on weak plants. If you don't have weak plants, guess what? You're not going to have as many. They're always going to be there. Nature's always going to get is, but you're going to greatly reduce the need for any type of pest or pesticide because you now have the balance in your soil. At the end of the day, what does this mean to many of us farmers who are on the sideline, on the outside looking in? Not only Black farmers, but farmers of all color, is less cost.
Awesome. So we're definitely honing in on regenerative ag and what it means for us. But why is it so important for people of color to take an interest in regenerative ag? What does it actually relate to? What does this mean about our food supply?
Um, it means that, as I said before, that understanding, number one, what's going on in our communities, not, I mean, everything ties together as we talked about before. We did a feat, what was it, February, January, where I think Uriah was talking about, food is medicine. It's not only money, but it's also medicine. And I think that applies to this. A lot of us don't realize that when we go to the supermarket, and we're buying this food, but it's, how it's been grown is very important. Not all vegetables are created equal, so I think that's really key to understand within our communities. Um, I think that the income aspect of it and creating on-ramps and market opportunity is another big thing. I think there's some opportunities that we have that we're creating as an organization because at the end of the day, our farmers are like, hey, why do I want to, lean into, you know, farming? Farming is hard work as it is. Why would I want to regenerate my soil and I have nowhere to sell my product? So that's another thing that we're doing within our community is we're gearing this thing up to really, for those of us who are here and who really are interested and want to be the early adapters, we're looking to invest in you and to really help you get some easy turnkey on ramps to at your own speed and meet you where you are versus having to deal with a lot of the quotas. I think that's kept a lot of us on the sidelines. So exciting times that are coming. What we're trying to do is just, my business mind is kind of crazy. What I try to do is find where those barriers are. That's kind of my gift to the world, is finding where those barriers are and then simplifying the complex, and guess what? Who cares if that's not the way it's always done? It's time to change it. Why can't we do it this way? So that's kind of the approach that we're taking. And what our hope is 2, 3, 4 years from now, our children have an on-ramp and have some hope and confidence, because I think that's the big thing, Arlena, that a lot of folks who are not a part of our race don't understand. They don't understand the mental side of it. They just, see that, okay, the situation is what it is. And even a lot of us in the Black community, we don't understand why things are the way they are. But it's a lot of mental, a lot of it is a mental piece, and the other part is circumstances. And a lot of times we think things are people problems when really they're situational problems. So as a chief executive, my job is to be a change agent, to help change the narrative, find out where the problems are and change the narrative.
Ooh, okay. Man, so it seems like this is a paradigm shift going on right now. We're transitioning from one thing to another. Actually, we're going back to what it used to be, right? And so what are some of these new ideas and innovations in ag that we should be aware of as listeners, and what are some things that we should be doing and paying attention to?
All right. So another good question. Let me make sure I'm answering this properly. So there's a lot of great innovations out there. For me, I'm a little bit partial to natural soil-based farming. There's hydroponics, there's um, aquaponics, there's all these other different ways of doing it. But to me, you know, I think at the end of the day, I want our farmers to learn how to first the fundamentals of farming with a shovel. And then, no matter if you have large acreage or you have small acreage, and I think that's a big mistake that a lot of our farmers make, is the large acreage farmers, try to implement something and they go broke trying to implement it. Start small, do trials. Um, and I'm getting lost on your question there. I think I go on my tangents. What was your question?
Innovations.
No,
Innovation.
yeah, we were talking
Innovation.
about innovations.
So
Yeah.
some of the innovations are, um, I would say, and I touched on it before, is nutrient density. They're going to start. The reason why you're starting to see so many of these commercial farmers who are showing up at these regenerative ag is not because they willingly want to do it. They understand, but they're looking at that bottom line. They're looking at those dollar signs. They understand that pretty soon there's going to be a shift from measuring yield to really measuring nutrient density. And that starts with your soil. So that's one technology innovation that you want to be aware of. Why? And going back to Arlena's question, why it's so important for us to lean in now. Because if you don't understand the principles and how to do this, and that train leaves the station, it's gone. There's not going to be anyone who's just going to willfully tell you the information that we are now trying to give you. Also, I think there's another innovation. You're hearing it a lot is carbon sequestration, being able to measure how much carbon that you are capturing, that's remaining in your soil versus being released into the atmosphere. Personally, I don't particularly like how that's being applied because there's some systemic racism, in my opinion, when you're talking about that, because many of us, due to systemic reasons, have lost a lot of our land. And what are they using to measure and to incentivize is, you know, per acre. They're going off of carbon per acre. Well, a lot of us have lost a lot of our acreages. So, and we don't have that. So to me, we should see something. I'd like to see them more incentivized towards market participation, for those of us who adopt regenerative ag practices, create pathways to get us, to the markets and selling our products, and incentivize us that way. But those are some of the other ones. Energy, there's a lot of energy out there. I think Texas, I forget what they call it, but where they go underground and they create They create energy that way and some type of generation. I forget what they call that, but there's also solar energy, which to me is something that we're really researching deeply, because I'm always looking for ways, especially for our older farmers or farmers who are more seasoned and kind of leaving the industry, but still are landowners and want to find a way to monetize their land. I think, things like solar energy can help, create some immediate cash flow to help them to hold on to their land, pay their property taxes, things like that. So those are some of the things out there. There's plenty, many more, much more. I just like to keep it simple.
Great, great, great. Well, you've been sharing a lot about how I guess you talked about the innovation in regenerative agriculture and how that benefits large scale farmers. Now, could you share with us, if these practices are also applicable to urban farmers and gardeners, like micro gardeners like me that I got my little herb, and when he starts acting up, I got to figure out if the soil's right, and I don't have no little livestock running around to like create, the same motion. But are there things that I can do, or I guess urban gardeners can do to make theirs a little better?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. And really, there's not a lot of difference in how we should approach it. Whether you have, you're farming out of your backyard or you're farming large I mean hundreds of acres. All of us need to learn the same principles, so which is, as I think I mentioned before, we got adding biology, live organisms to your property, water cycling, mineral nutrient cycling, and then utilizing the sun. So to me, the only real difference there might be, the biology. If I have a lot of acreage, I may opt to put livestock out there like we're doing, down at home on our farm, to implement livestock to create, from their poop, create, the microbiology that's going to feed the soil, based on regenerative ag principles. However, that doesn't stop you as a backyard gardener or even growing out of a pot to use the same principles. Maybe you're just, instead of using livestock and animals, you may just be using compost, but you want high quality compost. And trust me, there's a difference, y'all. So that's another whole webinar, but there's a difference between compost and quality compost. Okay, so just know that. But yes, using high quality compost, you can accomplish the very same thing that high acreage farmer is doing, just based on what you're looking to grow and what your end crop and your end product is. So, but either way, if you got hundreds of acres and you're trying to learn regenerative ag, you're still going to want to learn it on a small test trial plot and learn small and then grow as you learn what works on your farm. And the other thing to really understand is everything that we're talking about is in frameworks, in principles. What exactly works on my land may not work on your land based on the climate, the brittleness, the type of soil that you have, what grows great there, all the above can be different, but the principles and the framework still remains the same. So that's the other thing. I think the mistake many of us farmers make is we think that we all want to believe that we go to these workshops wanting to come away with that magic pill. It doesn't work that way in farming. What works on your farm might not even work over the fence in the next farmers, or may not work 10 yards away from where you're growing. You may have to utilize something a little bit different. That's called farming, y'all.
From my own experience and all of us, and Uche, he said he's a small scale, small herbs, but
Very
according
tiny.
to the USDA and FSA, a micro farmer is 300 square feet. So if you are growing in a bed, or you have some small containers, I know, and you're doing regenerative ag practices, and then where you may have grown to some acres like myself, a few acres, when you switch over to complete regenerative ag, it slows down production when you're really focusing on building up that soil. And so you can't just drop all the seeds and ready to harvest that crop and grow. You're going to slow down and watch the cycles that you've mentioned, the mineral cycles. Are you putting those things into the soil? Are you slowing down your use of water and really building it up? So regenerative ag sounds like it really takes some time. Why would a farmer, why can you tell us why would a farmer s choose regenerative ag when it slows down production, when you can in a few months have had 20 melons and peppers and tomatoes when you did it the normal conventional way? So can you tell us why would it be worth us slowing down the time?
Um, Number one, for many of us on this call, we're already on the outside looking in. So, are you monetizing your farm? And if you're not monetizing your farm, why is that? And for many of us, the answer is the cost of inputs. So if we and that combined with everything else that I shared, why wouldn't you? That's my question. Why wouldn't you switch to regenerative ag? It's not a livelihood for you. I've already shared with you that the shift that's coming, and it's already here, to be honest with you. So why wouldn't you want to learn these principles to get your soil to a point where it's built up to the point where it's capturing water? I heard the other day that 1 inch, if you in regenerative agriculture, once you get 1 inch of topsoil where it's filtering water correctly, that can be anywhere from 16 to 25,000 gallons of water that your soil holds. That's like a swimming pool, y'all, in 1 acre. So that reduces your water usage. In a place like Texas, in years like last year where there's no drought, some of you guys who've been to farms. We went to a sheep farm. We took our group to a sheep farm a couple of days after major storms and just a week long of rainfall. And as we're driving, we're seeing all these different farms where the water is literally sitting on top of the soil so that it's either flooded or the topsoil has washed away. We get to the sheep regenerative ag farm, and the guy's totally using the practices that we're talking about. And the guys who were there will vouch. I see a few of the names on here will vouch for this. You walk out on the soil, and it's literally feels like a sponge. Everything's green. There's no water. There's no standing water. And everything around him is the opposite. There's only one reason for that. It's because he took the time to do what we just talked about, which was to make the shift. And sure, it took a couple years to build his soil that way, depending on the practices that you adopt. But he's laughing all the way to the bank now because not only does his sheep have all the fresh, uh, forage that it wants, but he's not spending any money on irrigation at all. So those are some of the reasons. Like I said, we live in a society where everything is microwave. We want it quick. But as I say to many of the farmers who are on this call, the shift that we have, the good news of the shift we have isn't the shift that other folks have because we're not have to worry about how much money we're going to lose because we ain't making no money. So why wouldn't you shift your operation into something that's going to be much more efficient and farm the way our ancestors farmed and rebuild our soil so it's serving us as farmers?
Ooh, that's loaded. I love it. So I'm looking at, will regenerative agriculture correct environmental toxicity even in the small in the urban areas? Will it help do that? And yeah, I'm gonna leave it like that. That's loaded.
I would say absolutely, just because of everything I just shared with you. The question is will the urban leadership, allow it? And I think that really starts with investing the time and energy to understand the why behind the what. A lot of times when the leaders, of these urban areas and these metro areas don't really understand, it's just like, the topic of racism. It
Mm.
keeps getting the can keeps getting kicked down the road because people haven't really took the time to understand the root cause of what's going on. Everybody brushes it down the road or they want to put a label on it, and then we never get to the root. So yes, absolutely, regenerative agriculture can relieve a lot of the toxicity that you're seeing in urban areas as well as large scale farmers. But again, you know, are we going to allow greed to override that?
Thank you, Phil. So throughout our conversation, you've touched on why it's important for people of color, people like us, to start practicing more regenerative agriculture within our community. But more specifically, what does this have to do with our food supply? Because, I mean, we shop at all the big box stores or small box stores everywhere, but how does this benefit us in the long run?
Um, I got to be careful when I talk about this because it ruffles feathers. I don't want no
This is
lawsuit.
this is a safe
It's
space.
the alphabet stores.
Yeah, I know stuff gets around, but
Big
I
three
will
letters.
say this: Google greenwashing.
Mm.
That's
Mm.
something you want to understand, and really, what that's saying is that what started off as a great idea is right now being caught up in a lot of propaganda. And I listened to a well-respected regenerative ag farmer who works with, the top what we call health grocery stores out there. And he said as such, he said he's about to get out of it because they have a different scaling system that they have to abide by. But at the end of the day, it shows when it shows up on that grocery shelf, we don't know the difference between what's really been grown naturally and nutriently dense versus what is. They just sit it all out there. So um I'll stop there, but just be careful. There's a lot of greenwashing that in the best way. I think you said it, Uche, the best way is to grow your own fresh food. At least you know where it's coming from and how it was grown.
So I guess I have a follow-up question. So are you saying we shouldn't shop at the big box stores at all? Or let me be more specific. How do we go about finding quality food? Because, do I have to find a farmer in my neighborhood or in my area? Would that be a best bet? Do I have to find a particular, are there certain labels we need to find if we're in the store? If there's certain things we can't necessarily find by ourselves? What are your suggestions?
Yeah, I mean there are things, there's certain barcodes, there's certain different codes or levels. Again, it's all in the eye of the beholder. How that's being policed, there's some question there. So, like I said, the best bet is to start growing. And I think everybody, there's a reset. Uriah and I talk about it a lot. We're not conspiracy theorists, but people may think we are. But there's stuff that's going to be coming down the pike, and you know, a lot of us are sleeping at the wheel when it comes to, even if you don't monetize, learn how to grow your own fresh food. We all should know how to do that. We all should have a garden out back. There was I think a YouTube short or maybe it was a TikTok. Killer Mike was talking about it. I think a lot of us probably seen it, and he was asking people. He was at a conference and he was asking people to raise their hand if they knew how to fish. If they knew how to hunt, and from the vantage point I saw, most of the times he was asking these questions out of, hundreds of people in the audience, maybe one or two were raising their hands. And he was like, hey, we're going to be in trouble, y'all, because, we've gotten away from what our forefathers did. 90 years ago, all of us were farmers. All of us had gardens. All of us were entrepreneurs. All of us sold what we grew or bartered or something like that. That just was a way of life in our community. And that's something we need. If we don't do anything else, learn the principles of regenerative agriculture, because, you just don't know. All we know is what they're telling us.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear
Okay,
you. Yes.
play with the button so many times I wasn't sure.
Y'all ain't gonna
Um,
y'all ain't gonna let the audience get in here, get a little bit in, but go ahead
yes,
on.
yes. I'm gonna ask this last question, and we definitely gonna see what piques their interest. So I am a straight city girl, and I'm proud of it. I'm an urban girl. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. Even there's a lot of greenery. It's next to the projects and the highways. But I am still a generational farmer. It's still in my blood. My parents left the country town, red clay dirt road, and they grew all their food. They lived off the land to move to the city for a better job. Just so turns out that wasn't necessarily the best thing because the crime rate and so forth. They were used to living on the land. So my parents, wherever they are in the city, they dig it up and they're still growing produce in the city, here in Dallas and in New Orleans, and we have greens in our yard. But over time, my parents have picked up conventional practices. So even though I'm a generational farmer and I have been on the land and I've seen farming from my great grandparents, my father and my mother use fertilizer. They spray and they use Roundup and they use chemicals. So if when I wanted to pick up the baton and start growing my own food, how how do I even begin to do regenerative ag practices when everyone around me and all of my parents are using chemicals and fertilizers? How do I get started? Where can I find the information to tell me where do I begin?
So it's a at least for me, it was a mindset shift. And the mindset shift for me was, and I kind of touched on it before, not being so concerned about what was going on top of the soil before first having a clear understanding of what's going on below. So I think for anybody who is looking to make the shift, it's not going to be sustainable for you. You're going to always go, we're human beings, we're creatures of habits. You're going to always, if you don't understand, again, I keep saying this, the why behind the what, but if you don't truly understand what those chemicals are doing and how that's making you in the long run, is putting you on a treadmill of always having to try to keep your soil fertile versus your soil being fertile, is you got to understand the soil. You have to go back, re-educate yourself or educate yourself. A lot of us don't know. We came into farming with the understanding of always being just concerned about what's going on top of the surface versus what's going on under beneath the surface. So re-educate yourself. That's the first thing. You can't even, you can't even get to plant, to all the other stuff without someone really understanding that. And then from there, once they understand that and how it impacts the soil, how it impacts everything else you do in farming. My brother likes to call it, soil is the spine of farming, the backbone of farming. But if you don't understand that, you're going to just always resort back to doing what you know. So it's re-educating, just like anything else. Will everybody get it? No, is a person who sprays their fields and things like that a bad person? Not at all. It's just not the way that we choose to proceed as Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers CBO. We're going in this direction because it's the way that we're going, but we're not looking down on other people who decide that that's the way that they're going to continue farming. because people do things for certain reasons. We just bought sheep, and guess what? We paid enough money for them. They were highly, high registered sheep that, you know, if one of them gets sick, we're gonna give them some chemicals. We're gonna shoot something in their neck to keep them alive until we actually figure out what we're doing. And that chemical is probably not something that's good for the soil that can be pooped out, and we're ready to deal with that. So who are we to look down on another farmer for the practices that they are? That's not what this is about. But for the most part, we haven't had to use any of those chemicals, and we're going to do our best not to.
I'm glad that you brought up it tickled me.
I can't have them die. We paid too much money for
Treating your
Mhm.
sheep. So we can definitely say that transitioning from your conventional practices to regenerative ag, it's not a flipping of a switch, it's a transition. So you guys the farm and the sheep and you guys had cattle and now with the land and being grass farmers, you are having to transition. It is taking some time for you to transition your to completely regenerative ag.
Yeah, it's we're learning lessons. Some stuff we're taking notes on everything. That's the other piece that not part of this podcast, but a good tidbit. Um, Farmers, we don't like paperwork. We don't like to take notes, but you got to track what's going on. You've got to journal. You've got to, otherwise, guess what? You don't know why things are happening because you're just going day to day. So that's the other kind of tidbit is that we are journaling. We are finding some pretty cool things. For instance, we right now we bought some sheep dogs and but they're puppies, so they're not ready. And we had some donkeys and stuff out there to guard against the coyotes and things like that. But sheriff kept showing up, so we got rid of the donkeys because the neighbors were complaining. So there's nothing protecting the sheep out there. So we're keeping them in in our trailer, that our livestock trailer that we usually use for our cattle. And in doing so, we started just moving the trailer every few days so the ground below it, as they poop, wasn't, getting too saturated. Lo and behold, what was bare ground is now growing grass. We didn't plant anything there. It was always bare, but now it's fertile. And this has only been a couple months, so we're learning as we go on some of the things that we're able to do. We're able to roll out some hay and have them eat the hay, and grass is growing where rolled out the hay where grass never grew before. So we're learning some of the regenerative ag practices as we go, and we're taking notes on that moving forward.
Phil, I think you just shared an innovative farming practice with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
livestock in the cattle
Yeah,
space, and then you just move that all around. Like that's a I don't think you just
yeah.
let them go free, but you got to protect them, and you just
Hey,
place it every second,
rotational.
feed them, move it, and it grows
Rotation.
grass.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, rotational graze. Now we don't keep them in there the whole time, but like
right,
when it's
right,
night stuff, we don't want them out in the open because sheep aren't the smartest animals. They,
yeah, but
they have no protection. Yeah.
yeah, but no,
Yeah.
that's innovative because most folks may not even think that is the way, but you then move it to a different area, and that bottom
What?
space, blossoms with grass, and then you have good soil right now. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
There it is.
all right, all right. We got some questions in the chat. Um, well, actually, I have a question. I don't think we touched on this.
Okay.
What's the difference between sustainable, ecological, and holistic farming?
Okay. So let me try to hit that one. Just know up front there's all kinds. Everybody kind of has their definition, but the way I like to think about it is sustainable is really kind of a blanket term. It's covering everything from regenerative ag, ecology, so on and so forth. What was the other one you mentioned?
Ecological and
So
holistic.
so ecological is more so sustainable is really talking about ways to continue to create food, food supply. What does that look like, in our society, especially under the understanding that, the topsoil and some of the challenges that we have with climate. Ecological is really diving into the climate smart piece of it, but from a scientific standpoint. And then regenerative slash holistic is like I said, it's taking the nature part, the natural part of just growing and using all the resources and looking at everything as a whole and how everything impacts. If you get rid of that beehive there because you feel like it's a nuisance, what impact does that have on your entire farm operation? If you remove animals or livestock from your land, what impact does that have on your operation? It also factors in, not only nature, but, people and community as well. All that stuff goes into regenerative ag holistic. So those are kind of the differences if on those terms. But you know, you can always Google it, but like I said, everybody kind of has a lot of gray area when it talks about those different things, and you'll see those terms just thrown around because a lot of people who are saying them or writing articles on them may not understand the difference between them themselves. So they just are grabbing a word or phrase that sounds good.
Okay, okay.
All right.
Interesting.
Hey, I had a question, but are we out of time?
Now we got about 20 minutes, I think.
Okay. Like, so let's say, this regenerative agriculture concept sounds really amazing, and you're talking about using livestock, but you're not really on any acreage where you can use, a cow or even sheep. What are some other types of livestock for a small urban farmer? What can they use?
So I know we did some training too. So check out that YouTube or maybe Uche, you can find that, post that in
It's
the chat.
yeah.
But so there's some different ways. But let's say you don't have any animals at all. You're not looking to incorporate rabbits or chickens or anything like that. Maybe there's some laws in your urban area. Don't shy away from compost. And again, when I say compost, I'm talking about quality compost. There is some bad compost out there, y'all. So and we'll talk about it. Uche, I think I sent you some clips of how to create. We're going to do some training on how to create quality bio-based compost. And because compost can have pathogens in it, and folks will sell you stuff and put a label on it, and if you buy it, hey, they sell it. But some tips, if that compost if what you're putting in your garden smells or has a pungent smell, that's not compost, y'all. That means it needs to be compost. Okay. That means it needs to be put separate somewhere else where you're turning and got a heat component to it where it can turn into usable compost. Compost, if you go out to a forest and you just a forest that a lot of people haven't been out to or walking path, bend down and grab some soil and smell it. That's what compost should smell like. Okay, that's good. That's good compost. It means the nature already has done its job. Okay, so if it's got steam coming off of it, that's not good. That's not finished composting, y'all. They sold it to you, but it wasn't finished. Don't put that in your garden because guess what? Stuff will start dying, and you want trying to figure out what is going on. It's because you put poor or unfinished compost in there. I know Uriah did some stuff on manure, and there's a lot of confusion. Manure should be Manure should not be added directly to your your edible garden until you have at least a gap of 90 days before you plant, preferably 120. Otherwise, it should be compost and dried out before you add that to it. Now, if you got animals and you got them in a vegetable garden, you don't want to do that. It's a food safety issue. So you want to have your animals away from as you're growing your gardens. Now, once you harvest and you want to let your animals in there to eat what's left over, that's fine as long as you don't grow it. So getting all that out of the way, compost, because I tend to get off track. Orlando, you're supposed to play some music for me when I do.
That was Uche. Uche,
Uche's
Uche
supposed to play
forgot
some
the
music.
music.
So don't start the music yet, though. So
Yeah.
getting back to we got this little Academy Award thing going, y'all, where we start rambling and play music. Um, but getting back to your question, Uriah, let's say you can also not only put compost out there to substitute for the animals, and it will build your soil a lot of times faster than someone who's using animals, to be honest with you. If you're using quality compost, but you can also use compost liquid. So let's say you have a larger area, or maybe your acreage, you're a larger acre farmer who's growing crops, but you don't have animals out there. You can create compost and then use liquid additives. We did that. I kind of showed, I think, in one of our farmer boot camps what that looked like in an area that had no vegetation on it, the before and after. So even that works to build your soil depending on how you're saturating that soil. So there's all kinds of different ways you can do it. There's not just one way. Matter of fact, I'm doing something, a conference they asked me to speak in Denver, and afterwards, some of the guys that were at our summit at the no-till are going to take me over and show me how one of the farmers was able to do compost, use compost to farm large acreage, and how he does that. So that'll be pretty cool. And as always, I always bring that back to us. So I want to see what that looks like and what some of the systems he's using. But compost is the key. Quality, true compost, not the garbage that they sometimes try to sell you.
If you don't mind me sharing, I'm with the group and then later we'll share more. But the conference you spoke at, the women's conference, I happened to be visiting their nursery a few weeks ago, I believe, in Waco. And they have a composting machine and a composting room. And they have a subscription system where the community they give them these 5-gallon buckets. They take them home, they guide them and tell them what they can put inside, of course, only organic matter, vegetables, things out of the earth. And then they swap them, return them. They pay this small fee, they bring it back, and they put it inside a compost machine that is constantly turning it and it is maintaining the temperature. It's pretty amazing. And then they weigh it, and then they've had the power go out, so they have the traditional method where they rotate it, the 1-by-1 ratio, and then they mix it and turn it in the big barrel if the machine isn't working, and then they refill it into those, they rotate it based on the temperature and the aging of it that Phil mentioned, and they put it back in the container. So when the person comes back a week or two later, based on their subscription, they bring them an empty bucket and they hand them a full bucket and they constantly rotate it. I took some pictures and just gonna throw that out there because Solutions Holistic Farms wants to get into that, get into that. But I wanted to share about the small livestock. I actually added I am in an urban space. I have a micro farm outside the side of my house and in my backyard with some raised beds, and I compost. Um but I do use compost tea that Phil mentioned. I mix the matter in a lot of water and I spray it to build the soil. But when it came to the farm, when I upgraded to the farm space, I'm still in a very urban space. I'm right off the highway, literally. On the other side of the tree line is the highway. So there is some urbanization to that farm. A lot of rock, debris, it's compacted, it's struggling with soil erosion and flooding. So I am working in small chunks of space. So, being that I'm a regenerative ag farmer and just really looking at my goals and what it took to augment that soil, and I'm putting in a lot of work to combat the urbanization of that soil, I chose to get the chicks. to help me, some small livestock that's safe in the city. And I got them as babies, so they were very inexpensive. We actually, it was part of my overall goal for my farm. The overall goal was to have very rich soil and to show you the transition from city urbanized soil to a very healthy, rich soil. And I don't have irrigation on the farm. I don't need irrigation on the farm. And so I'm trying to amplify that. So I did get some small chicks. My neighbors have several chickens in their backyard, and we have some farmers that we work with that they have chicks and quail and rabbits in their backyard. So I am going to add the rabbits in some time, but I have to use some wisdom. The sole purpose of the chicks was for them to, like Phil said, I'm going to rotate them. I am feeding them produce scraps, and I'm giving them oats and grains, and they were lucky to get some mealworms here recently because the compost bin had a whole bunch of worms. I was like, the chicks are like this, and I threw it in there, and they loving it. And I tell you, they were tiny chicks 6 weeks ago, and they're like this now. So the proof's in the pudding. My regenerative ag practices have been working, but I really got the chicks because I wanted them to help me with the land in the city because I'm in the city. So the chicks are there just to poop and run around and pick through the weeds and pick through the grass and eat the bugs as I'm working these weeds down. That's the sole purpose of why I got them. Now, after I sat down and did the math, and I realized that each chick provided 200 eggs per year, and I got 6 chicks. I was like, hold on. And then when I priced the price of free range, so my chicks aren't in cages. They're small now, they're in a pen, playpen actually, but they're going to be free range and I'm going to rotate them. So they're not going to be exposed to their own ammonia and chemicals. And I'm going to slide the chicken coop and move them across the land to continue to augment the soil. They're free range. So when I was doing some research in my studies to be a regenerative ag farmer, the price of my free range organic fed eggs range between $6 to $8, $6 to $9 a dozen. So after doing the math, I didn't count on that. So I wanted to point out that the small livestock in my urban space was solely to augment the soil. But in the long end, in the end game, that very small to little profit that I put into the chicks because they were $4 a chicken. I barely spent $25. I feed them produce that I already had, and those chicks are going to provide $6,000 a year in egg production. Because I did the math, 1,200 eggs, all those chicken, that's 100 dozen. Was it 100 dozen or 1,000? I'm sorry, 1,000 dozen, 1,000 crates of eggs at $6 average on the low end, 6K in production from the high quality regenerative, just from me trying to just do regenerative ag practice in a small urban space.
I'm smiling because that's the model. We gotta have more stories. Number one, kudos to you for keeping those chicks alive. Because we might have to have you give a seminar on that
Not
alone.
yet, not yet, not yet. I lost two. I lost.
No, that's
I
still
lost
good.
two.
That's
And
still good.
the guard animal, yeah, that's where the African geese is coming in later, guys. That was the purpose of the African geese later for the guard. Yeah. So yeah,
I
not yet.
hear,
The challenge is still there.
yeah. I mean, I hear a lot of farmers, again, kudos, a lot of people lose them just because, they get sick or they get cold easy. And so again, kudos to you. But that's what it's all about, is creating. And the thing is that, the thing I love about you is you're not afraid to go out there, see what works for you, make mistakes. You're gonna lose some. Nature's gonna get is. That's just the way it works. But learn what works for you and, fail your way forward. That's what we got to do and figure out what goes on what works on your particular place. And, that's trial and error. Start small. $4 a chick is a small investment to figure out, you know, what you need to do next.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm jealous. I love me eggs every morning.
I'll bring you some eggs. I have plenty. I was thinking about that. Where am I gonna put all these eggs?
Don't tell me it's a good
Everyone
time,
can have a
Marlena. Don't
dozen
tell me
eggs.
it's a good time. I will drive
Everyone.
up and grab some eggs any day. Yeah.
Have you ever had pickled eggs? I
No.
had some on the East Coast. I went to Pennsylvania. It's a regular thing for them. They pickle the eggs, and they were wanting to show me. I bet you we pickle things that you don't pickle, and I was like, I doubt it. Mississippi, they pickle pig lips, so I was like, we'll see. Pickled eggs, they
Well, I learned
pickled eggs,
something new today.
pickled quail eggs, and chicken eggs. That's right.
Pickled quail eggs. Never had that. Never. Hey, look, hey, chat. Please tell me if you had pickled eggs before because I want to know what it tastes like. If you can describe it, I would love to know. If you have a question for Phil, if you have a question about regenerative ag, if you have any question, please put in the chat. We would love to get your feedback. This has been an amazing conversation so far. So far. Now, Phil, we have one question on our docket that we haven't asked you, you know. And this is for everyone out there. If you don't know, Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers, we release a newsletter every week, regularly every Tuesday morning. We would love for you to subscribe. We have a YouTube channel. I know I shared a YouTube link. Subscribe to that as well. We're constantly sharing notes, information, knowledge on there. This is stuff that you can take and learn. And of course, visit our website. We have a ton of information on there that you can learn as well. But Phil, this is for you. How do our audience members look into transitioning into a more natural way of farming and get more engaged and participate in some of the things that we've discussed today? Like how best can they? Because we've discussed, the challenges, we discussed how hard it is, but how can they just go right into it? What was your suggestion?
Um, that's probably I would probably create two tracks. Because farming, let's be honest, it's not something you just jump into. I got family members because our property, like I said, our property's been in our family for, since the late 1800s. So you can imagine how much family, we have. And every now and then we'll get somebody who just, hey, we got this land. What I need to do? And it's like, okay, really? Are you really going to
Right.
invest the time and the energy
Right.
and do what it takes? Is this something that you really want to do? So we've set our organization up. There's no membership fees. But with that, you can already tell the passion that each one of us holds. We want to meet you where you are. So we've set this thing up where you can be on one track, and that one track is just to attend these knowledge forums. There was no charge, other than your time, and listen in. You can go to our website. We have our learning library. We even have a YouTube page, and start perusing, learning stuff, and just go through some of those courses as well. And if there's something that's not on there that you want to know, feel free and put it in. I don't know if you could put our admin's email. Just email us, and we'll probably point you in the right direction. I mean, we will point you in the right direction. So that's one track. Maybe you're not quite sure if this is a leap you want to make, or you're an existing farmer, but you're like, man, I'm not too sure on this regenerative ag stuff. I need to know a little bit more. That's fine. Keep showing up, keep reading the newsletters, keep joining these knowledge forums. And is there any specific needs? That's what we're here for, is to be a resource for you to point you in the right direction, based on who and what we know. Now, for those who have said, who are the early adapters that says, no, this is what I want to do, then, Uche, if you don't mind, well, here's what I would do. I would say email to that admin email that Uche is putting up there. I'm all in. Because if you're all in, we're ready to feed into you. What we're doing right now, we're working we're part of the Regional Food Business Center, Delta. So we're working on ramps right now where there's no quotas. It's just, hey, you grow it, we buy it, and you get paid for it. Because what we're trying to do is create stores, just like what you heard Arlena share with you. Because we do understand that there is a lot of apprehension. And in our community, because we're so traumatized, we get it. It's like, look, I'm not investing all that time and energy and what you say is not true, and it's really about what you make it. We're gonna invest in you, but we need you to meet our energy. If you're half stepping, then that's okay. Just show up at the knowledge forum. But if you're serious, let us know. Send us an all in. We'll reach out to you. Make sure you put your phone number, email in, or we'll have your email, and we'll reach out to you and we'll get you some insight of some of the things that are coming down the pike. I can't talk in timelines wise. I want to talk definites. Unfortunately, I'm dealing with the federal government, so they don't move like I move. They move a little bit slower than like I move. So some of the things that I'm putting out there, I have to kind of reel back until they're ready for it. But from what I hear, we're about 6 months away. And that means in farming that those of you who are all in, we need to get started now. And we're putting together some incubator and accelerator programs that are going to be mandated. We're putting together some easy on-ramps for you to participate in wholesale markets. We understand that 95% of us on here work a day job. You don't have time to be sitting at a farmer's market all day to try to sell your products that you drove 2 hours in the hot sun and your poor lettuce done wilted. We understand that. So we're trying to fill in those gaps, and we're doing certain things that I can't fully talk about now, but they're coming down the pike. So stay with us, keep showing up at these knowledge forums too. And we're building our tribe, but if you're not serious, it's not something you want to do, please, do your neighbor a favor so we can really lean into them. And I see some names on here right now. You're going to hear from me. I'll be calling you. I know that you've been showing up and you're ready. I'm ready too. I'm just waiting for the government to say, hey, it's a go. It is a go, but I'm waiting for their processes and then we're going to go. But I'm told 6 months from now, we're going to hit the ground running. So let's do this. Don't worry about hitting any quotas. We're going to meet you where you are. Whatever that looks like, we're going to aim to fill that because we want to create stories, success stories. So the next wave of farmers who look like you and I, they say, okay, I believe now, let's go. So, but for those of you all in, let's go. I saw all in pop up in the chat. I love that.
Yes, we have a few all-ins already, so I'm very excited. I'm very excited.
All right. Just make sure you send us that email so we know how to connect.
Email. I'm sorry if I caused any confusion. I was just excited and I typed in, I'm all in. And everybody kind of falls through. You send that email, you guys, to admin.
Put in the subject line and I know.
Yes. Well, we are at the end of our knowledge forum. Thank you so much to everyone that showed up. And like Phil said, please email admin@tsfrcbo.org. Subject line, I'm all in. And we will get to you because like Phil said, there are some amazing things he can't talk about right now, but trust me, you want to be part of this boat. And like everything's pretty much free, right, Phil? Everything's free. I don't think
it's no charge. We don't say free.
No charge. Yeah. It is no charge whatsoever. So the things that we're doing is to benefit us, to make sure that it's for us and by us. And I think that's really where we take pride in what we do. So please stay tuned. Very excited. And until next time, be the exception.
Exception.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.